Hello YouTube, this is David on behalf of Godsman00, also known as DC7845. I know it's been a while, but today we are here to discuss Extra Booster 2 Banquet of Divas, continuing on our journey through our retrospective of Vanguard sets. We're going to be taking a look at the small Extra Booster set that was released after Awakening of Twin Blades but before Breaker of Limits. These are very impactful sets, so it didn't feel right to include Banquet of Divas with either one, but as a result, we don't have too strong of a set to talk about. And it's definitely a smaller one too, so this is probably going to be a shorter video than most. Feel free to skip this one, it wasn't super impactful, and if you don't like Bermuda Triangle, it's understandable. It's probably one of the most controversial clans in the game, but this did happen, so we are going to cover it, so let's kind of just jump into it. Banquet of Divas was released on March 10th of 2012 in Japan. It received an English set 8 months later on November 3rd of 2012. The set contained a total of 35 cards, definitely a smaller one, but not out of the ordinary for extra boosters at the time. And 4 of those cards were, funny enough, reprints from Onslaught of Dragon Souls, which is, funny enough, actually where the clan first got its first 4 cards, but the cover of the set didn't feature any anime sets, just like extra boosters normally don't at this time, but it did feature the Pearl Sisters. We'll come back to them later. They're some of the better cards in this set. So, just in case you haven't been watching along, Awakening of Twin Blades was super impactful to the metagame. This is the set previous to this one. It had a lot of powerhouse cards that power crept the format pretty hard. This is important because in Japan, this was released right after Set 5. However, in English, we would get this set prior to Set 5. That's a big deal because it actually increased the viability of some of these cards in the English format, and that's not something Japan really got to experience. You'll see this a few times with a few other sets we talk about here in the future during Limit Break era. Some of them were released prior to Booster Set 5 in English, but they were released after it in Japan, so you'll hear me say this a few times. It just increased the viability of certain cards. It set the precedent, though, for Bermuda Triangle to always be supported in an extra booster or clan booster once per year, and it was just one set that'd be dedicated to Bermuda per year. This had interesting implications, as sometimes you wouldn't get enough cards to keep Bermuda in contention, and sometimes it kind of like broke the clan, so you'll find out. But it's kind of a weird clan for all of those reasons, and we're just going to keep going into this. As one would expect from this one set that's dedicated to one clan, Bermuda got a lot of options and a lot of deck choices right out the gate. Honestly, probably more than all non-Q4 decks. It had clones of several existing cards, but also a lot of unique cards, and oftentimes these Bermuda sets felt like testing grounds for different mechanics, some of which would be implemented into other clans later. An example is the new style of ride chains. The Riviere ride chain, for instance, was very similar to that of Set 4 that we saw, but a bit different and honestly a bit better. The starter had 2 skills. One, if it was rode upon by the grade 1 of the chain, you get to look at top 7, and off the top 7 you can either add a grade 2 or a grade 3 of that corresponding ride chain to your hand, and then otherwise, if it wasn't rode upon, you could call it to rearguard circle instead. This solved the problem that starters from Set 4 had, because now your starter wasn't completely dead if you didn't see that grade 1 initially. And whereas the hard search for a grade 2 might be better than a top 7 check, at least there was something there to help you find the remaining pieces of your ride chain. The grade 1 and grade 2 of the right chains were often copies of each other, no matter which one you're looking at. They often had rode upon skills, like when you're climbing the chain, you get this additional effect. Most of the time they were +1, so that was nice. In the case of Riviere's literally just says, like, when the grade 2 rides upon the grade 1, draw a card. When the grade 3 rides on top of the grade 2, draw a card. It's just easy draws if you manage to ride up correctly, which is honestly pretty nice. A lot of clans would have killed for this kind of plussing, but it ended up in Bermuda. Each card in the right chain also gained in a continuous 1k on the Vanguard circle if the previous part of the chain was in the soul, so this made for 8, 10, and 11k bases respectively, which was nice. And this style of ride chain was implemented into several clans with varying levels of success, probably the most notable being Spectral Duke Dragon, and we'll talk about him and I think only like 2 videos, so get ready for that. As far as the best cards in this set, it's pretty small. I don't have too many specific cards to talk about, but let's kind of dig into it because we want to mention a few that would get support later and got better over time. I've already mentioned Riviere's ride line. I neglected to talk about its boss unit though. That's Top Idol Riviere, so we're going to kind of step back to that for a bit. Like all bosses of this ride chain, if Super Idol Riviere was in your soul, it gained a continuous 1k, making it 11k base. It has a second effect that states when its attack hits, you can counterblast 2, discard a copy of itself to give 3 rear guards plus 5k power. Yeah, Persona Blast wasn't just that one thing and done. We did get another one here. This was a nice pseudo soul saver effect, but the cost was quite steep and it was locked behind an on-hit condition. To say the least, the best part about Riviere was its ride chain. She herself was not super great. We would get a lot of Riviere support over the years though, so she would get better. Despite what Riviere or Pacifica would actually have you believe, this clan actually specialized in bouncing rear guards from your circles back to your hand. Obviously, Riviere nor Pacifica actually show that, but there was a boss unit in here. It was the Ashura Kaiser clone, so the one that can get an effect if you drive check a grade 3. That's Velvet Voice Reindeer. With her as your Vanguard, if you check a grade 3 Bermuda Triangle unit, you can bounce a Bermuda Triangle back to your hand and then call a Bermuda Triangle from your hand. So it's an extra attack. Can also reuse on play skills, and so that's pretty good. But of course, it comes with the drawback of you need to check a grade 3, so not super consistent to build your whole strategy around. But this idea and concept of bouncing rear guards and recalling them was definitely something greatly expanded on in the future for Bermuda. The only other boss that I really need to bring up here is Top Idol Pacifica. She had 3 different skills for some reason. And she was this clan's ultimate blast unit. Continuously during your turn, if you have 4 or more rear guards, she gets 3k power, so a nice 13k attacker. At the beginning of the main phase, you can soul charge 1, draw a card, and then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. Lastly, her ultimate blast skill was an on-hit, but it did call 3 Bermuda Triangles from the deck, so it was powerful, but it was still an ultimate blast, so don't think too much about it. But Pacifica was pretty good. So Pacifica can actually use, or the clan itself, Bermuda, could use its soul really well with cards like Top Idol Flores or Bermuda Triangle Cadet Caravel. And it is also a hand filter at the same time, which was really nice. The fact that it was 13k attacker was also quite nice, because that'll let you hit cross-right numbers without a boost. So yeah, Pacifica was actually quite okay as a boss unit, but not a whole lot else going on here as far as bosses go. These are the 3 main ones. Bermuda Triangle also got Bermuda Princess Lena, which is kind of similar to Sakuya, if you remember that from the Oracle Think Tank trial deck. But she's kind of like a basic skill. It's not too impressive, so I don't want to spend too much time there, but bouncing your own rear guards back to your hand was definitely much better in Bermuda Triangle. So let's talk about the rearguard support units that these three bosses got. They're all generic, so nothing was like specific to one of the three bosses or the other, which actually gave you a lot of room to experiment and create new decks. But the first, let's talk about the Pearl Sisters, the cover cards of the set. They're two of a kind. No, they're not the broken ones from V. They're just very tame. Pearl Sisters Perla has one very simple skill. When her attack hits a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast one, bounce a Bermuda Triangle back to your hand. So just a super simple skill for a Soul Blast. You get to bounce one. This is generic utility for Bermuda, which is good. You can reuse on place effects. But it also came with a grade 1 counterpart with Pearl Sister Pearl that made Perla even better. Pearl says that when placed on Rearguard Circle, you can choose a Pearl Sisters Perla on Rearguard Circle and give it the skill until the end of the turn that states when its attack hits, you can draw one and soul charge one. So the combo is that you call down Perla, you call Pearl, Pearl gives the skill to Perla. If the attack hits, you can Soul Blast one to bounce the Pearl, the grade 1 booster, back to your hand. And then the skill given by the grade 1 will activate, so you'll get to soul charge 1 and draw a card. So you'll refund the soul that you lose from the bounce, and you'll also draw a card at the same time. It's really nice. It's on hit reliant, but definitely probably the best quality cards the clan had access to at first. The second duo of rearguards that we want to talk about is Girls Rock Rio and Rainbow Light Kareen. They both share the same skill. When returned from rearguard circle to hand, you can counterblast one, soul charge one, and draw a card. So lots of ways to go ahead and give you back soul, as well as draw cards. It's pretty nice. Not many clans have access to this kind of generic way to plus. The only drawback of these, specifically Rio, is that Rio has an 8k base, which isn't great. But outside of that, they're incredible advantage cards. They worked well with cards like Perla or Top Idol Flores, just anything that could bounce. They were great targets for reindeer, etc. So very nice advantage cards that a lot of other clans honestly would have killed for at this time. Bermuda actually had a lot of decent forerunners, which is kind of crazy. Bermuda Triangle Cadet Weddell is more known for her more recent premium appearance in a FTK deck, but it was a pretty okay forerunner for the time. It had an axe skill on rearguard circle. You can move her into soul, choose a Bermuda, and bounce it back to your hand. Obviously, this was for a loop in premium, but in the OG era, it was more of an okay card. Just provided a free bounce for no cost and gave you a soul. So very good with Rio or Kareen or something like that. Bermuda Triangle Shizuku. You'll hear Shizuku again at some point during G because they gave this girl an archetype. But she was pretty solid, and she would be reproduced for every single clan after this. Skill is very simple. On rearguard circle, you can counterblast one, put her into soul. If you did, you look at top 5 and add a grade 3 from among them and shuffle the deck. So this kind of skill would be printed on a ton of forerunners in the future. This was just a common effect you'd see on forerunners, and it was very balanced. Look at top 5 for a grade 3 can help with consistency, especially since grade 3s were often the cards that you played the least amount of copies of, only running like 7 to 9 or so back then. So it was nice to be able to have some consistency with seeing those. The last card we just want to mention here is Bermuda Triangle Cadet Caravel. I mentioned her earlier. It's a grade 0. It's not something you want as your starting Vanguard, though. She just is a on place on rearguard circle. You can Soul Blast 2 to draw a card. Basically a luck bird, but it's on a grade 0. And has a 3k base. But hey, at least it has a 10k shield, because the idea is that you're going to bounce it back to your hand over and over again. So it's got the 10k shield as a grade 0, and then it's basically a luck bird. So I think it's a little bit better than luck bird in the context of the clan, but it looks bad as a 3k beater. But if you put it behind a Pacifica, it's still a 16k column, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. All in all, those are the most noteworthy cards for this clan from this set. I skipped over like some more niche cards. I just want to talk about the most important stuff. And a lot of the other cards were more like pre-existing cards that already exist. Like Mirtoa, I think, is just a clone of Dark Cat. They have a few others that are just like, oh, this is 11k beater if you have 4 Bermuda Triangle units, etc. So I don't want to really go too much into detail with those. This wasn't a super competitive clan. It was a really fun clan that saw some play in English, but didn't really see much in Japan. It just had some interesting concepts. You'll see that with Bermuda Triangle a few times. They just like to experiment with this clan, and sometimes it goes the right direction, sometimes it doesn't. So you could take this clan in multiple directions right from the get-go, which is very interesting. A lot of clans didn't have this kind of flexibility yet. And the most important takeaway here is that Bermuda got 2 types of each trigger. So they got 2 crits, 2 draws, 2 stands, and I think it was just 1 heal, but it could have been 2 heals. Not that it's needed to have more than 1 type of heal, but besides the point, a lot of clans didn't have this kind of trigger lineup yet. They were still stuck with really bad trigger lineups. Luckily, this would become more of a normal going into Limit Break era, or Asia Circuit era, if you will. A lot more decks would start out right out the gate with 2 different types of triggers. Really helped the viability of a lot of these clans, because you could actually make good trigger lineups. So overall, Bermuda Triangle had very little impact on either metagame, essentially, but it was pretty cool over here. It had some decent card advantage, offensive threats. Reindeer checking grade 3s wasn't super consistent. Riviera was an on-hit. Pacifica was an ultimate blast, but clan just didn't have its like super strong winning image yet, so it suffered a little bit early on, but you'll see later on down the line as it gets better and better cards. Bermuda would be pretty fair until like end of G, but it did get better. It wasn't, this kind of this weak of a clan for too terribly long. So extra booster tube, very short entry into our Chronicle series, but it was at least interesting, and it definitely sets up for what you can expect over the next couple sets. If you hung out until the end, I really want to let you know that I appreciate you supporting the channel and our ever-evolving content. Next time we'll talk about Breaker of Limits and the limit break mechanic, so definitely prepare for that, because that's going to be certainly more interesting to talk about than Bermuda. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribing, checking out some other great content. We have fight nights, anime reactions, top 10s, etc. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Don't forget to buy the wedding rares, Mew.